Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer, thanks to Matt for this one. Amy uses Stolen Strategy to exile Warping Wail. The only lands Amy controls are mountains. Can she cast Warping Wail? So, if you look at what Stolen Strategy says, it says that you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast its spells. That's a problem because colorless is not a color, so Amy will need some real-life, actual colorless mana to cast that Warping Wail. Stolen Strategy will not let her spend other mana as though it were colorless. This is the same reason why you cannot cast Warping Wail from your hand if all you have is 2 City of Brass. Tapping for 1 mana of any color is not any help if you need colorless mana. In contrast, let's take a look at this other card, Gonti, Lord of Luxury. Gonti says that mana of any type can be spent to cast the card. This means that you can cast Warping Wail with just 2 swamps, just fine. But what about this card, Icehide Golem? Well, this is going to be a little bit embarrassing because it turns out that you cannot cast that with just swamps. See, if you take a look in the comprehensive rules, you can find that the phrase on Gonti where mana of any type can be spent to cast the card is defined to mean that you can use mana as though it were colorless mana or mana of any color, but snow is not a color of mana. That snowflake symbol is just shorthand for a mana of any type that was produced by a snow source. The rules surrounding that phrase on Gonti are thus not broad enough to allow casting that spell with just swamps. Amy would need a snow-covered swamp or some other source of snow mana for this. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while now, you already know I'm a big-time templating nerd, and if you've been playing for long enough to remember the original printing of Gonti, you might have noticed that it looks a little bit different. See, effects like this used to be worded like what you see on the Gonti on the right, and as far as I'm aware, this change in wording was intended to be non-functional. It's just a matter of trying to make it clearer how Gonti interacts with some other cards. In particular, there was one very common source of confusion that stemmed from the difference between you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type and as though it were mana of any color, like what we saw on the Stolen Strategy. Colorless is not a color, but it is a type of mana, and hence the difference in how these two cards interact with Warping Wail. I think that Gonti's template does a somewhat better job of communicating how it interacts with cards that have colorless mana in their mana costs, thus alleviating some of that confusion, and a much better job explaining how it works with cards like Firespout that care about what color of mana was spent to cast them. But this is at the expense of being a lot less clear in how it interacts with snow mana costs. I'm not quite sure yet if I would say that I like this change, but I am prepared to believe that this is just me irrationally preferring the older template because it's more familiar to me. I'd love to hear everybody else's opinions on this point in the comments below. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.